That's right. In fact, our dietary guidelines also says that at least 50% of the cereal which you are taking should come from whole grains. So whole grains means mostly whole wheat atta, or some people consume even millets as a alternative cereal. But there again, the acceptability and preparatory issues come inside.
Yes.
Because it doesn't have gluten.
Yes.
So roti making with millets is a challenge. Not everybody does it. Whereas for whole wheat atta, it is an easier thing to do.
Right. So in the US, when I go for grocery shopping, I buy just small packet of Ashirwad atta is something that I do, whole wheat SP. Personally, I've used it. And at the same time, I have also used the millet angle as well. As you said, millet takes a lot of time to be soaked, and the preparation takes a little bit of time. But that also has a good source of fiber.
Yes. It's a very good source of fiber, a lot of micronutrients, and it's considerably low glycemic index. So the sugar spikes are minimized if you add millets to your diet.
So your take on this millet biscuit, millet cake, millet noodles, your take on that?
See, this is actually a very tricky question if you ask me. The reason is, when your basic product, I'll tell you a biscuit, a basic product actually has refined flour. It has sugar. And into that you add a little bit of millet. It doesn't become a healthy option. The basic ingredients which we say you should not take, which is maida and sugar, is still there. So any such things are always okay if instead of no millet biscuit, a millet biscuit is slightly better. But it is not considered as a healthy option. So as only when we increase the content of either whole wheat flour or increase the content of the millet content significantly, for which one has to read the label on these particular things. You see the label and see what percentage of added sugar is there and what percentage of the millet flour or whole wheat flour is added in them. And then use your wisdom to choose the ones rightly. So that is the important aspect. And millets, as such, if one can, use millets as a whole meal itself, then you get actually a better advantage.
In some patients listening to this podcast may think that, hey, we have to have some kind of snacks. And for that, instead of eating like a maida biscuit, I'm giving a millet biscuit for my kid. The problem with that approach is the amount. That is where the problem is. Just because it says millet biscuit doesn't mean that it is a completely healthy thing. An amount is an extremely critical thing. I think more than protein, fiber, carbs and all those things, I think amount
yes. Portion size is very important.
Is very critical.
So that's why we feel that if there is a biscuit which says is good for diabetic, if it's a normal glucose biscuit, you'll probably eat only 1 or 2 biscuits. If you give me a biscuit which says good for diabetic, I'll eat 4 or 5 because you anyway say it's good for diabetic. But 4 biscuits sugar will add up to that of 2 biscuits of the ordinary biscuit.
Yes.
So that is how hidden you will consume more.
Right.
So you always have to read how much is added sugar. So if you can reduce the added sugar intake through any of these products, see whether they're genuinely healthy, then it's a healthy option. But if you're, examples, if you go to even sweet shops, they sell the peda or any of the gulab jamun saying diabetic friendly. What they do is they replace part of the sugar with a non-nutritive sweetener. But the fat and the oil and the maida is still there. Okay. So we therefore tend to, if you instead of eating 1 gulab jamun, you'll eat 2 or 3 thinking it's anyway good for health because it doesn't have sugar. So healthy options are to be not taken on face value. You have to investigate it yourself and confirm that it's really healthy for you and then consume. Some products are really healthy. Some products claim to be healthy by just mildly replacing good ingredient instead of sugar. That may not be in the long run helpful.
So talking about sugars, the biggest myth that people are talking about is fruits increasing your glycemic levels and causing damage. As a gastroenterologist, we have done a lot of research on fiber and gut health, and it is very clear that the more the fiber, it acts as a prebiotic, and that helps the gut bacteria to produce a short chain fatty acids, and that helps the gut lining, and the gut lining gets connected with the brain, and the brain gut axis is getting stronger. And one of the most important ingredient providing the fiber is the fruits. So I tell my patients that every meal there should be a fruit as a whole and not a juice, so that you get the fiber. Some people are hesitant with that recommendation that, fruits, people think that I've been told that it causes fatty liver, it increases the risk of obesity. Why is that change?
Yeah. Fruits basically do contain sugar. Okay. So they also have fiber. So there is a plus point and a minus point in every fruit. You have to now weigh the relative amount of which fruit has more fiber and less sugar, and which fruit actually has more sugar and less fiber. So you take a banana or a sapota, it will have more sugar and very little fiber. You take, let us say, a papaya or a guava, it will have much more fiber and less of sugar. So what you do is, if you have to eat fruit, you can choose any fruit, but choose the ones which has got more fiber and which got less sugar. So many people, it is almost like vegetable. If you take, for example, we recommend vegetable, right? All vegetables are healthy. But people think potatoes are also vegetables.
Yeah.
And they prefer potatoes. Yeah. But potatoes only starch. It doesn't have much of fiber. And potato is not. The same way fruits also. People think banana is the only fruit. Because banana has its own advantage. It's got high potassium and other things.
Correct.
But you have to limit the intake of fruits with less fiber and more sugar and increase the other way around. So it is left to us to choose the right fruit and not think all fruits are same.
What do you recommend, sir?
Actually, especially for diabetics or people who are weight conscious, who want to reduce their sugar intake or liver problem, etc., fruits like guava is the best. Because it's one thing, it's not an exotic, expensive fruit. At the same time, it has got less of your sugar and lot more of fiber. And limit the use of bananas and other things. And even watermelon. Watermelon is one peculiar fruit which actually has a lot of sugar. Okay, so, but 95% of watermelon is water. So only contains only 5%. So even if you eat a cup full of watermelon, the amount of actually sugar which is coming is very low.
Very low.
Most of what is coming is water. So that way watermelon is a better fruit.